study guide if you want. I know it's a Scantron on it. This is super secret. But I make up new tests every semester. So next semester I'll just make up a new test. It's no big deal. So we'll go over the test, and then I'm going to talk to you about ignition systems, and then maybe even as far as get into cooling, heating, and anti-ice this evening. So I know Heather was in here last week. Do you guys have any questions from last week before we get this week going? Anything? Anything? Good. Okay, so we've got some personnel issues, and we'll deal with those out in the shop. But otherwise, everything should be moving ahead. Now we have just a few weeks left, but we have time, and so we should be able to finish on time. Now Larry's telling me what the class ends on the 25th or something.
Yeah.
Is that our last class? Of course, I was thinking, because I like my job so much, I was thinking that it goes all the way through to Memorial Day weekend. But any of you want to come by Memorial Day weekend, I'll still be here. But know that that you guys will be off for the 25th.
I was looking at the writtens. And one of them's like describing a FADEC system on the sign.
Yeah, let's do that in just a minute here.
Yeah.
So hold that for just a minute.
Yeah.
So Hildebrand, there you go. Pass that back to you. Myra? We're getting. Thank you. Right. Well, there's going to be some retests, yes. No one's failed yet. We'll get you to use that word. We still have plenty of time. We still have plenty of time for you to fail.
Jake, do you make these or what? What's the deal?
Yeah.
They're gluten-free, don't you?
It's on.
You made them or you just put them out of tub and put them in the oven?
Jordan, there you go. I used to have a guy that was a student, he lived in Julian, and he had this old Chevy Suburban, and he would put his dinner on a manifold. Put it in aluminum. What's it?
Glenn Boost.
Oh, Glenn Boost.
It's because you have two people to cheat off.
Tyler.
Here.
Hang on a second, I'll do it. Deborah. Rodriguez. So there's four of you gonna have to do a retake, and you're just gonna sit here and get your answers. I think this is a big review. Here. And of course, Wings. Okay, okay, I'll be right back. Go ahead and look those over. I'll be right back. I have another bit of
There is no pneumatic generator. Why would you have something that produces air pressure and drives something that produces electricity? You thought of everything about the pneumatic starters, yes, but you don't have a pneumatic starter generator. Generator driven. You have starter generators. Start moving or polarity to turn into a generator, but it's not even that. No, I looked at that one with oh yeah, but it wouldn't. You don't remember, it wouldn't be a starter. It wouldn't be remember that starter. It spins the can over the spins which spins yeah, it's pneumatic starter doesn't blow air to the engine, it just pneumatic that drives motor.
Okay, so before we start that, and before I forget again, some of you are graduating. And so I have some petitions to graduate here that we generate for you to take the pain out of it. So I'm just going to read through them. Anybody, if you hear your name called, sing out, and I'll get you one. Sandoval? No, Sandoval. Linus. Liz,
Did you make it yourself?
Yeah.
Vilas, no Vilas, no Vilas, no Vilas. Flurry, Flurry, Glacier. Matthews, Stevens, no Stevens here. Brian Jones. So usually it's a pretty quick fill out, leave it in the box outside of my door. Brian Jones, you got two. Maddox, Maddox. Here, I've got.
Ask me for permission, take it. I think I already put one of these on.
What?
Maybe we just need to. Or That's so filled up then. Well, dude, so sign it up.
Zero. Zero?
Graduation ceremony.
Right there?
Yeah, you
Right
can.
there.
Yeah.
You got any other class? Okay, good. So you've already done yours?
But
I'm not sure.
You're not sure.
I turned something in for you, but I'm not sure if I turned that thing in for you.
Okay, so this will bounce back, so a lot of times what they will do, I'll check on you
Okay.
to make sure that we have you. Okay,
do I need to have both of these filled out, Lonnie?
what's that?
Do I need to sign both of these in terms of?
What I need for you to do is just fill out this section right here, the one in the middle. Anything that's applicable, and I need your signature. Actually, really what I need is this part right down here.
And your credit card number, and social security number.
Date of birth.
Social security number, just your signature.
Passport number.
Passport number, who knows that?
Yeah, they got some new stuff on there, but really all I need is your signature. And we'll wing the rest of it. We've been known to add your social security number. We've been known to sign your signature when you guys are already gone sometimes, so. Some of you may look at that and go, that don't seem right. You never know. We're not buying stuff for you on eBay or anything. Verizon,
That's how you make some money.
Wheelers,
No, you're broke right now.
Amazon.
Lori,
Continued
Laser,
education.
let's go back through this again. This is kind of a mess, but know that when you all look forward to it at the end, it'll be your mess. And the rest, everybody else sitting in the classroom, be going, what the hell? Trying to play this game. Next one. See? Ford, oh, I missed you. Here you go. Oops, sorry. Stevens, Paddock, Monroe. Zero, that's all I got. Good check. Yeah, good check. I gave her a long list of people, and it's possible she missed something, so this is counseling.
I did it with my counselor.
Oh, no, you're all done. Yeah. Yeah, did you make a trip up there and tell them you're graduating?
Sounds like it's fast.
Oh, no, you're all set, man. You're all set. We just take the pain out of them, keep them from having to have 30 some odd people go trooping up there.
This is for my AMP, right?
What does it
Does
say?
he have like two? Oh, yeah, okay.
Here, you're good. You're good. Okay, let me get the roll here real quick, and we'll get rumble along here. Okay, let's see here. So Anthony's here, Blues is here, Serra's here, Farmer's here, Flood. Ford, Hildebrand, Jones, Jude, Kennedy, Kefis is here, Clark is here, Lane is here, Kinder's here, Scott is here, Scalco's here, Manning's here, Morgan's here, Myron's here, Ricky, okay. Linda's here, Benzalone, Enriquez is here, so is Deborah, Jason, yeah, there you are, okay, good. And, okay, so we got that all done. All right, so let's go on to the test. And again, any of you filling one of these things out, leave it in the box next to my door. If I put it on my desk, it will almost certainly be gone. Somebody's already filled one out here. Oh no, that's San Diego. So most of you guys that are graduating, I have your certificates printed. And the last thing that happens to those is next week they go up to the principal's office, but it's the president's office, and she'll sign those for us, and then they'll be in your files. How many of you have jobs pending when you get out of here? I mean, some of you want to have a job, but how many have jobs pending when you leave here? Okay, that's good to know. Then I can dog a little bit. How many of you are gonna try to take your test as quickly as possible? Let me say that. Oh, you bastards. So I can't dawdle in, I gotta get it done. All right, so these things should be available first part of June. Call here, see if you get a hold of Art or Art. I may be here or not, but make sure somebody's here when you're here. You don't wanna come here and find the place all closed up, so. Art has a job, he's a 9 to 5 guy, so he should be here ordinarily. All right, so, let's go ahead and roll on here. And, I have the master for this test in longhand, I also have the Scantron, so I'll just go through it in the longhand here, since that's what you're using. Again, you can keep these things, so mark them up if you want, and, using the study book for your final. For your final, you're gonna get a test, you'll never see it again. It'll be a Scantron test. You'll take the test, that'll be the end of it. You guys will be able to walk on out the door. So, so know that, we'll park peacefully. We'll take the final out here in the lab around the big steel tables, just so, you know, because you're kind of packed in here a little bit, you know. One of your neighbors might look at your test and stuff, so I don't want you to have to worry about that regarding your test, looking to see what they've got going on. So know that it'll be a little bit different layout when we take the final. That'll be the last full day of school for us here on Thursday. All right, so the test, item 1, bearings are used, bearings using gas turbine engines may be ball or roller type. True, false? True enough. All right. 2, bearings are contained by cages and races. They roll in a very thin film of oil. True, false? True enough, yeah. Maybe you had John Hickman's patented lube pool class yet? This was kind of a replay for you, I think, in many ways. Those of you that get to that class, you graduating and you haven't heard you had John Hickman's class?
Yeah, I've had it.
Okay.
Shook my hand,
Yeah. He's like, that's like taking a class from your grandpa. All right, name this type of seal.
yeah. I've heard it, too.
Yeah, it's a labyrinth seal, so it can be used for air or liquids.
Mhm.
Well, sure, yeah, it could be used for both, right? All right, 4, what are these seals pictured below seal, air or fluids? Yeah, these are for keep the oil on one side, the liquid on one side, and the world on the other. Item 5, the seal pictured in number 4 is known as a lip seal, but possibly a garlock seal. True, false? True enough. Garlock was a company, again, that made these seals for many, many years. They still do. Chicago Rawhide, sometimes you see a CR on these seals. CR stands for Chicago Rawhide because that's originally what they made seals out of, was rawhide, the leather. Item 6. Cough going here. Labyrinth seals rely on full contact between the rotating knife edges and the stationary outer shell to keep air or oil from passing through the seal. Are these full contact seals?
No.
No, so the answer is false. Labyrinth seals rely on close proximity between the rotating knife edges and the stationary outer shell to keep air or oil from passing through the seal. True, false? True enough, yeah, we're using close proximity. We're also using a delta in the air pressure that runs through those seals. There's inevitably going to be some air pressure or fuel pressure or hydraulic pressure or whatever runs across those knife edges. We're going to use that delta to create that seal. Oh, item 8. How does a labyrinth seal work? Okay, air movement across the numerous seal edges and spaces creates a high pressure zone. It creates higher pressure air or oil on the opposing side, and that's the full gist of it. There's nothing more tricky about it than that. Okay, item 9. Ball or roller bearings roll on a continuous film of oil for lubrication and heat removal. True enough?
True.
You agree? Okay. Balls or rollers and bearings may be coated with silver oxide for corrosion prevention. The cages and races will always be bare heat-treated steel. True, false?
False.
False. Yeah, so what we have to do is silver oxide isn't very hard, it's not very strong. And if it's running against a race, it's gonna come peeling right off. So we use the silver oxide on the cages. We use the silver oxide on the cages to keep them from rusting, because every one of those metals is gonna be a slightly different, dissimilar metal. You can't have all the same metals running against each other, they try to weld themselves together. So the cages are the easiest thing to create out of the simple and cheap steel. So we coat those with silver oxide. Item 11, carbon particles or pieces of metal may affect ball or roller bearings in what way? Okay, balls or rollers may skid and flat spot their surfaces. Carbon is a good lubricant and will lengthen the life of the balls and rollers. Which of those sounds right to you? A sounds better. Okay, engine oils. Mineral oils and synthetic turbine oils will offer equal performance in modern turbine engines. True, false?
False.
Everybody agree?
False.
Karen says false.
False.
Agree? Everybody? Everybody?
Yep.
No, why? Okay, good. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, remember the temperature ranges that I showed you? When I showed you those oils, they start out at a fairly low temperature, like 400 degrees, and modern aircraft engines are way above that most times. While all brands of lubricating oils are cross-compatible, mixing oil brands is not recommended because foaming of the oil in the system may occur. True or false?
True.
Yeah, true enough. What would you do if you had to mix some different brands of oil? What'd you do?
Changes the first available opportunity.
You could do that. Yeah. Is there usually any maintenance information about that? Maintenance, Anthony, you were saying something.
Oh, at least make sure that they're at least both synthetic or,
Well, synthetic, yeah. Would you guess if there's any maintenance information on that?
There is.
Probably.
probably an emergency thing.
Yeah, you wanna look at engine maintenance manual for some further instructions, because we march to, there's something called tribal knowledge, and everybody kinda gets onto it, and first one person says it, and everybody's beating the same drum. And that doesn't usually go very far, and that's usually because the first person who said it didn't wanna go look in the book just for the proper authority. So what we do is, we try not to use tribal knowledge in this business, because it can get you in trouble just like that. So, it's an easy way to do something, so people flock to it. How many of you like going to the maintenance manual? Sure, liars.
It's all right.
You're a liar. So what happens is people tend to flock to that stuff, and because it's easy. And so what you really need to do is at least once find out what happens if you do have to use different brands of oil. Now, most of the time, it's going to give you a line like what I told you, that they're all cross-compatible, but it's also going to say that it is recommended at some point, and they'll give you an hour time, that you should change that oil. You might even have to change it again, and maybe even a third time, to get every remnant of the first stuff out. Now, silicone oils, or synthetic oils, have some silicone in them. The silicone is known to be a foaming agent. So let's move over to the world of recip engines for just a minute. So we use filters on those, spin-on filters now. It used to be everything was just a screen, and that was no big deal. But now we use filters. And so filters have a round gasket on them, a rubber gasket or synthetic rubber gasket. And so what we do is we spin that gasket on, you put it onto a contacts and turn it another 3/4 of a turn. But what happens is that gasket spreads out, locks itself into position, and when you try to get it back off, there's a son of a gun to get back off. So what they do is they recommend that you use this compound called DC4 or DC111. That is a silicone compound. So you put a very thin film of it on between the contact surface between the rubber gasket and the engine. And the reason that you do this is that it tends to close the pores and keep that surface elastic. But as people do, a little bit's good, a lot more is better, right? So DC is a Dow Corning product, it's a silicone product. DC4 is a little thicker than 111. 111, you use it with turbine seals, environmental seals on the igniters. And what happens is people, as they're prone to do, will put a little bit too much on. And when you push something together that is coated, what happens to that material between the two surfaces that are getting squeezed? Squeeze it out, right? So you squeeze out on the outside, it's no big deal, but is it gonna squeeze on the inside too? Yep. So it's gonna begin to mix with the oil. So know that when you put the stuff on, use it real sparingly. Just a glossy film is all you need. It'll do the same thing as if you get the squirt tube, because it comes in a toothpaste tube, and you go, right? Don't do that. You don't want to do that. Stuff's expensive. One tube will last you, gosh sake, almost a lifetime. So just use the tip of your finger, just wipe it on there. That's all you have to do. When that oil gets into even the mineral oil, it will cause it to foam. And that can cause you some problems too. So that's just an aside to cross compatibility here. All right, coking. What is coking? Anybody?
Burned hydrocarbons.
Who said it?
B. Burned hydrocarbons.
B. Burned hydrocarbon is crystallized. So it's not just carbon. It's carbon that's gotten very, very hot. You cook the full constituents out of the mineral oil, to where now what you have is this carbonized, almost glassy compound. All right. Under some circumstances, can coking be detrimental?
Yes.
Okay, so you think about those little turbine engines you have outside there. And many of you pulled your oil nozzles out. Remember what those look like? One group, you haven't done that yet, so don't worry about that. But there's an oil nozzle goes in the back of the engine, a couple of them, right? How big is the hole in that thing?
Not big.
Dinky. Dinky. The engine will hold 120 some odd PSI, but it does that because that hole is so small. And you don't need a lot of oil to cool the bearing or even to lubricate the bearing. So what happens is it's an area that the oil tends to stagnate in. So when you shut the engine down, what is this procedure to help prevent any coking that might occur?
Keep the engine running longer.
For what reason?
So the oil could circulate and cool down a little bit instead of running full throttle.
So stand up so everybody can hear you say that. You're dead on. But I want you to stand up and say it so everybody. I know you like to talk. Stand up. Go ahead.
So the oil have time to cool down the parts as you run the engines. When you come in, you want to not shut it down right away. You let it run a little bit so the oil can have a chance to cool down the parts.
Sure, and especially on a helicopter with skids or floats. So those airplanes are going to air taxi all the way to their parking. And they're going to be carrying a lot of power to air taxi. It takes a great deal of power to hover a helicopter and air taxi. It takes a lot less power to fly along straight level than it does to air taxi. And so what happens is you're generating all this power and you think, man, I gotta pee. You get back to your parking and now you gotta sit there for another 10 minutes while the engine cools down. But Ed's exactly right. If you don't do that, that oil doesn't get a chance to circulate through the system. The blowers on the oil coolers don't get a chance to cool that oil down and stabilize those temperatures before it goes back into the oil system. So that oil, if the engine is shut down immediately, guy jumps out head straight for the toilet, and what's going to happen to any oil that's sitting in that nozzle at shutdown? It's going to cook. It's going to be cooking. Exactly right. Any of you ever cooked chicken in a frying pan at home? Mm-hmm. So, do you cook anything in the oven? Like a chicken pot pie or something? So if your oven looks like mine does, you know what coking looks like. All right, bearing lubricating nozzles can contain very small orifices at their tips because of oil flow from the engine oil lube system to increase oil pressure and decrease oil flow for positive delivery to the oil and roller bearings. True, false? Little bitty holes out at the end. We're decreasing the delivery rate, but we're also increasing the pressure of the system. They're little bearings, little dinky bearings. They don't take much oil. They need to be cooled, but they don't need a big sloshing of oil. Okay, item 17, metal particles generated from within the engine may cause skidding of the bearings. True, false? True. Sure, they act like little wheel chocks is what they do on the bearings, and then the bearing can skid. The parts can also move if they're small enough between the bearing and the race, causing a score. Okay, into starters here. Pneumatic starter generator may be a type of starter used on turbine engines. True, false?
False.
Pneumatic starter generator? Come on, think about it.
I've never heard of such a thing.
Well, you have it as false here, I wrote true, if it's true, then I should get that one right.
You're not gonna get it right because it is false.
Well, don't mislead me that way.
Is it because of?
I know your heart just lifted for a
Yeah.
minute.
I was like, yes.
Is it because the turbine engine doesn't just start it off?
No, I still use a starter. So
It's a fan in front
a
of
pneumatic starter is just a pneumatic starter. Electric starters can be just starters. Electric starters can be also generators.
Right.
Starter generators, right?
Right.
But they have to be electric.
Oh.
Oh.
Not just pneumatic.
It's
So that's the key.
He forgot to put electric in there.
Okay, so that one's false, 18 is false. 19, air impingement starters are commonly used on turbine engines. True, false? Air impingement, yeah. So you're blowing air through it. It's like an electric, like a pneumatic drill motor. Item 20, what happens when during cross-bleeding air for starting during multi-engine aircraft?
See,
All we're doing is we're taking air from one engine and cross-bleeding it or rerouting it across the aircraft into another engine section. So if you had a 4-engine aircraft, you could go right to the next one. If you had a 2-engine, you could go across the cabin, across the fuselage, all the way to the engine. So there are air ducts that run throughout the aircraft. And you just simply make the selection and the valves open and close, making the connection between the source and the receiver. Okay, starting a modern high bypass turbofan engine requires high pressure air for starting. True, false?
False.
False. What kind of pressures are we using on a modern engine? Or even a not so modern?
Low pressure.
Low pressure, high volume.
Low pressure, high volume, yeah. Anybody got an idea what kind of pressures roughly?
Something like less than 30.
Yeah, about 30, 35, somewhere in there. It's fairly low pressure.
So it was like 20 to 30 PSI.
20 to 30, that'd work too, probably, yeah. You wanna have enough air pressure going through there, and then of course, every foot the air moves through a cross-bled line, you're gonna lose pressure. So initially, if you use pressure off ground power, you're gonna have that full 35 hit that starter all at once, and that'll be fine. If you start the starter, or start the engine, with a starter that has an inadequate air supply, what kind of thing are you facing in that case?
hot start.
Hot start? Exactly right. And that's because why?
You're flooding the engine with fuel.
Engine's going rich. Yeah, we don't have enough air moving through it. So the starter doesn't create any air flow of its own. It creates the airflow through the compressor. Faster the compressor turns, the more airflow you get through the engine. Okay, item 22, an APU may supply not only hot air, or not only air, but also hydraulic and electrical power to the aircraft. True, false? Yeah, exactly. The JFS starter, jet fuel starter, uses special fuel from a separate fuel supply on board the aircraft. True, false?
False.
False.
Uses jet fuel, it's in the name.
We're using the onboard fuel for this starter. So it's there, it's not an extra system. All they do is tap into the existing fuel system. Okay, item 24, of course, I give you the answer after I ask you the question. Jet fuel starter is a small turbine engine, true, false? Jordan,
I got it wrong, so. But
what, we
it's-
got it wrong, so what's the other one? What would be the answer?
It is a small.
Yeah, exactly right. So right next to B, or right next to A, you wrote Jordan. This is the answer.
Yeah.
You've already done that? Okay, good. All right, 'cause you're gonna do good this next time. 25, because pneumatic starters are air cooled, they typically run very cool and have long duty cycles. True, false? False. They do get hot. And so the duty cycles on these, that is to say how long you can run these things without overloading them or over-temping them, is fairly short. It's not that short. You can run them a couple of minutes. But you have to know that these things are not built to start and then start again and then start again. So if you have a condition where you can't get the engine started, you have to let it shut down and cool for a period of time before you try to restart it again. And this has nothing to do with starting the engine, it has everything to do with saving the starter, because if you break the starter and the engine doesn't start, then you're out there, you got the cowl open and the passengers are talking about you and your mama, because now you're not getting the engine started. You're not going to grandma's house, it's Christmas, and you're out there standing in the snow, changing a starter on one of these things. Now, it doesn't take that long to change a starter, but usually, you have to go get a starter out of stores. And then you gotta get your tools, and then you gotta get the appropriate maintenance publication. You gotta make a log entry after you get all, and then if you monkey around with this, it's gonna take an hour easy. Change something that's on a quick disconnect ring, so you'll loosen about 6 bolts, disconnect the big duct on the back, give it a quarter turn, pull it off, take a new one, put it back on, quarter turn, put it back on, after you've moved the spline, because now everybody's up there in the window looking at you like this. But it's still gonna take you an hour to do it, so the aircraft can't launch until the paperwork's done. All right, now some of you are sitting down there kind of close on the bubble. And so I throw a rescue question in every once in a while. And this is if you had that strong 68 going. And if you answered this rescue question properly, I'd give you that extra 2 points. And so that would bump you over into the magic 70s. Some of you didn't work so well for you. Pneumatic starters will use their own oil supply for lubrication. It will be the same type of oil used for lubricating the engine they are installed on. True, false? True enough, yeah. That's just compatibility. Okay, so I've got, I think I got 4 of you that are in a little trouble here. But you should be able to do really well now. I don't recall what the lowest score was, so you 4 will, when we break for lunch, in about a half hour here, when we break for lunch in a half hour, 40 minutes, what I'll do is I will give you those tests that you will take them, you give them back to me after lunch, and then that'll be the end of that. Whatever you gather for yourself, I'll score for you. If you score 100, you're still only going to get whatever the lowest score is for the class. So if the lowest class right now, running for the class is 72, you'll end up with a 72, which will still be in the game, right? Right? Still be in the game. Yeah.
I got number 18 wrong, but you didn't mark it down.
There's a God. And her name is Landon.
Oh, okay.
Landon scored these, so I'm gonna go with what she has. I'm not gonna go back and do that.
Okay.
Thank you for your honesty.
You can give that to Jake, he needs it.
Yeah, maybe, yeah, spread that, spread the word. Sometimes you win and sometimes you lose. And, but you did, you won that night. It didn't affect your passing grade.
No.
She said she got like a 90 or something.